March, the Spyguy, writer, historian, conservative. And today normally I talk about current affairs and events going on in the world. But today I have a friend of mine, Richard Swank, joining us, and we're going to have a bit of an interview and we're going to get into the issues of the day. So, Richard, are you a conservative?
Yeah, I am. I definitely. I'm not a. I've never been a member of a political party.
Mhm.
Um, I was an officer in the Air Force for 10 and a half years and uh, was in ROTC for 4 years in college. So when I was became voting age, I was involved in the military, and I very much agreed with uh, the ethos that military officers should be independent.
Mhm.
Um, all that being said, I'm a conservative independent who's voted for a Democrat once in my life. So, and
Mhm.
I'm 52 years old. So I think that tells the story.
Yeah. No, I was when I was young, I was much more left, or not left, liberal. Uh, what ended up happening, though, I had read a whole lot of military science fiction growing up, so that kind of skews you to the right very hard. Why did you decide to join the Air Force?
So, my grandfather and my great uncle were both in World War II in the Army. My grandfather was in the field artillery. My great uncle was in armor, Sherman tanks. My grandfather was at Omaha Beach, um, and my great uncle was in the Battle of the Bulge, and so I had an interest in the military. I spent a lot of time with them when I was young on my grandfather's farm, and that really influenced me. And I developed a love for airplanes, and like a lot of kids in the '80s, Top Gun came out, and I was addicted. I knew I wanted to be in the armed forces. I really struggled between the Navy and the Air Force. Um, and if flying planes wasn't going to work out, which it didn't in the Air Force, I ended up fixing planes.
Mm.
But if flying planes didn't work out in the Navy, driving ships or anything like that didn't interest me. So I joined the Air Force and was an aircraft maintenance and munitions officer for 10 and a half years. And I also, my second to last assignment, I was a logistics career broadening program officer at Hill Air Force Base in Utah, and got my feet wet. I jumped in the deep end of the pool with acquisitions and uh, program management as well.
Yeah, I tried to join up myself in the Canadian Armed Forces, uh, but they kept screwing around the dates, and by the time I came around the next year, I was working full time. Uh, and I've told the story a few times to Americans, and they're always like, "If that had happened in America, you would have been on a bus the next day." And later, my stepbrother now, my mother's on technically hasn't married the guy, but they're practically married for the last 4 years. He's a Canadian Armed Forces, and he said, "Dave, your story happens to lots of people. Our recruitment system is terrible at their job." I'm like, "Oh, okay. At least now I don't feel so bad about it." But so, what uh, what rank did you achieve, and what was it like being a mechanics and logistics officer?
So I separated up the day I put in my separation papers in 2006 was actually the day I pinned on major.
Hmm.
I separated in February of '07. Uh, Being a maintenance officer, it was every I was very disappointed. I was a pilot candidate, and I was medically DQ'd my senior year in college. And my ROTC commander was a F-15 pilot,
Hmm.
uh, and he guided me towards aircraft maintenance. He thought it's something that I would enjoy and that I'd be good at.
Hmm.
And I was very skeptical and disappointed, as you can imagine. And it was uh, it turned out to be great. Unfortunately, in the Air Force, there's something I like to call the corporate Air Force.
Mhm.
You can't stay on the flight line as an officer, um, with your maintainers and your airplanes for your entire career. You have to do staff work. You have to do all the things that aren't fun. I wish the Air Force was like more like the Royal Air Force, where they had flight lieutenants, and you can just or the U.S. Army has warrant officers, and you can just do your
Mhm.
career field and not have to do all the political VS and staff work that unfortunately is required in the U.S. Armed Forces as an officer, because there is nothing better than uh, you know taking your guys and gals and your airplanes and deploying, and it's a lot of hard work, very long days. The aircraft maintenance mission, I like to say that aircraft maintenance and munitions were the offensive linemen of the U.S. Air Force.
Mhm.
Um, we're very, very important. Nothing gets done without the offensive line, and we don't get talked about much unless we do something wrong.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's very much. I like to compare the military to football,
Mhm.
and but that's very much the way it is, and I think as maintainers we like it that way. Um, we work hard, we take care of each other, and you know, we're not expected to, nor do we do not expect to be in the spotlight, and that's just fine with us.
Yeah. My father had a similar situation, and he ended up joining the Canadian Air Force, went through the equivalent of ROTC back in the 50s, got disqualified because of these.
Mhm.
Uh, though he did get a lot of the pilot training, so he did learn to fly planes. He just wasn't allowed to. Op- he got to like regular training planes. He couldn't get by that time. We were flying star fighters, so he was not jet qualified. But he ended up being uh, more morale and maintenance, no morale officer or something like that, and that was actually the job of the intelligence officer, which he said if he had been allowed to fly planes, he would have probably stayed in there. But in Canadian in military, you're not allowed to talk about religion and politics in the mess, and that's all my dad wanted to talk about. So he became a university professor. So it worked out well for him.
Yeah, I worked with some Canadians when I was on the E3, the AWACS airplane in
Mhm.
Oklahoma. That airplane had a NORAD, North American Air Defense Mission, and so we had some Canadian crew members that flew on the airplane. Um, Not many, and they actually deployed with us on occasion. We had some Canadian crew members. We call them the back enders, the folks that aren't the pilots, flight engineer, navigator on the E3, that
Mhm.
are running the mission systems and the radar, and controlling the uh, the fighters in the back end of the jet. We call them back enders, and that's what the Canadians did. I don't recall us ever having Canadian pilots, but they actually deployed with us in 2002 for Enduring Freedom. We were flying out of Oman, flying missions
Mhm.
over Afghanistan, and we had some Canadians with us. And Canada's great. I know we like to give each other a lot of flack back
Mhm.
and forth, but I uh, Canada's a great ally, and my time working with folks in the Canadian Air Force, it was a good time, and really really good folks.
Yeah. No, no, no. People don't know this because of the officer training exchange program. Canadians ended up in a lot of strange positions. So we're not officially involved in Iraq during the initial invasion, but Tommy Frank's deputy officer was a Canadian, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. He had about 333 officers serving during the Gulf War and during Cobra 2.
I remember General Franks, but I did not know that his deputy was that he had Canadians on his staff.
Yeah, no, it was. I read about it. We have a magazine kind of like called McLean's here, and it's like uh, uh, a Time or Newsweek equivalent. And when I was a kid, I was reading it, and I had a subscription, and I read an article about the Canadian officer training program, and it came up. So let me turn off my phone here, buzzing away. And yeah, so What missions did you end up on?
So my first airplane was at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska. Was the RC-135s,
Mhm.
the rivet joint and the combat scent, the UV and W models of the aircraft. They're electronic intelligence, signals intelligence aircraft. Um, very, very specialized, particularly the combat scent.
Mhm.
And uh, it was kind of the start of my Air Force career of working something we called back then we called them LDHD, low density, high demand aircraft.
Mhm.
They're also referred to as HAVA aircraft, high value aircraft. Uh, and so the RC-135, I was deployed to twice to Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, where we back then, this is 1998, enforcing the no-fly zone over southern Iraq called Operation Southern Watch, and that was a very tedious and repetitious mission. Yeah, every day was pretty much the same, but it was interesting. It was at that time the tip of the spear of what the Air Force was doing. Uh, we had some combat operations in 98 over Iraq. Towards the end of 98 was Operation Desert Fox, where we bombed Iraq for several days. The real contention in that time was Iraq's weapons of mass destruction program, and they would not allow the UN inspectors in to look at it,
Mhm.
and so that was a big part of the tension at the time. Um, and then I PCS to South Korea, where I worked. I was the sortie generation flight commander in the Fifth Reconnaissance Squadron, the Black Cats, world famous Black Cats, uh, working on the U-2 reconnaissance aircraft.
Mhm.
And that was a very, very interesting mission. One that there was a lot of action in 1999. The North Koreans were being very bad actors. You can Google up something called the Crab Wars of
Mhm.
1999 between South Korean fishing boats and the North Korean Navy, and there were some shots fired, and uh, very, very interesting. And then being in South Korea for Y2K,
Mhm.
uh, we were flying at midnight, and there was definitely some concern of what the North would do when that happened. Fortunately, nothing did, and so I missed the party of the century to be at work.
Yep.
Uh, but uh, the U-2 is a really interesting airplane, really frustrating airplane. Also,
Yeah, I've heard.
uh, yeah, it's they're not really built to mil specs, to military specifications. Each aircraft has their own basically set of blueprints.
Mhm.
A lot of contractor support. Lockheed Martin, we have we had 4 Skunkworks guys assigned to us in Korea.
Mhm.
You know, guys that worked with like uh, the Kelly Johnson and Ben Rich, like way back in the day.
Mhm.
They've been Lockheed guys for a long, long time, and uh, and so they were an encyclopedia of knowledge, to say the least. Um, but they also had they weren't shy sometimes about not necessarily following technical orders and taking shortcuts because they knew best.
Yeah.
And then all the mission systems on the aircraft, the cameras, the sensors were all contract supported. I think we had 17 different companies that had contractors in our squadron supporting the mission systems of the aircraft, and it was a very stressful mission because uh, we would fly daily, and you're right up on the North Korean border. And at Osan Air Base, it's the headquarters of 7th Air Force, and that's the air component ACC, the air component commander for the peninsula for U.S. Forces Korea, is a 3-star general at 7th Air Force, and our ACC was very interested in what we were seeing and doing every single day. There's something called the COIC, I'm going to get this acronym off, the Combined Korean Operations Intelligence Center. And people, so there was real-time data link downloads while we were up in the air. People would be watching what we were doing, what our cameras were seeing, what our electronic and signals intelligence was gathering. And so if we had problems getting the aircraft off, there was a lot of higher ups wanting updates on what was going on and when it was going to be fixed and all of that. So, but the U-2 was a really fun mission.
Yeah.
Then I left Korea. Go ahead.
No, I said I can imagine. It was a fun mission.
And then I left Korea and I went to Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma on the E3 AWACS, Airborne Warning and Control System, as we affectionately said, America's war against common sense. And that was probably my best assignment. I was there for 3.5 years and deployed to a lot of places, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Oman, doing the no-fly zones. And then unfortunately, 9/11 happened. And that was, when 9/11 happened, we were, for quite a while, we were tasked with homeland defense as well as our overseas deployment. We also did counter-drug operations in Ecuador and Curacao, working with the Navy and the Coast Guard, keeping track of mainly of drug boats and things like that. So I never got to go to Curacao with the aircraft. I did get to go to Ecuador. That was interesting, but 9/11 was a game changer, obviously. Being deployed, coming back home from deployment, it was almost more stressful being at home with the air defense mission because we were 24/7 ops over New York and Washington, D.C. Plus, we had to maintain an alert aircraft, and then we had the 2002 Olympics as well. So we had to fly 24/7 combat air patrol over Salt Lake City for the Olympics. So it was a very, very busy mission, very rewarding. And made, my best friends I made in the Air Force were with the AWACS program. We were a tight knit group, and that aircraft, it's a part of everything that the U.S. military does when it comes to air operations. The Airborne Early Warning Mission, and so we were just everywhere. All the training exercises. We had aircraft permanently stationed in Alaska and Okinawa as well. NATO has had and still does have a very large AWACS contingent in Geilenkirchen. And there's AWACS right now in the Middle East. They're kind of doing their last hurrah. They've retired about half the fleet. And it's kind of uncertain what the Air Force is going to do as far as a replacement. That's up in the air. It was going to be the E-7, which is a Boeing 737. It's called the Wedge Tail. It's already in service with Australia operates them, and not sure if the Air Force is going to buy it or not. There's alternative theories as far as different assets, and maybe they can accomplish the mission. So that's still up in the air. In the summer of 2003, I left Utah. I was selected for the Logistics Career Broadening Program, which is a headquarters Air Force Materiel Command program. It's pretty competitive, and went to Utah, and that's where they teach you all about you're essentially a student for 3 years, and they teach you all about you do these different rotations in different specialties, program management, depot level maintenance, finance, and did that. And I got pretty into the weeds with the A-10 aircraft when I was there. That's where it goes for depot level maintenance. And at that time, we were doing the Charlie upgrade to the A-10, which was the precision engagement basically making the A-10 a smarter airplane. Link 16 gave it the ability to drop precision-guided munitions, laser-guided munitions. I forget who was the CENTCOM commander, but it basically there was a cutoff in 2006 for the A-10 that if the A-10 is not a C model, don't even bother sending it to the theater over Iraq. It has to be able to drop precision-guided munitions. Link 16 is a data link that is shares a battle picture and is still critical to what we do, what they do in the air battle space. It gives a lot of situational awareness, and if you just don't have it, you really can't participate. You're not a very effective contributor to the battle space. So we were modifying the aircraft, and the A-10 had a lot of problems at that time with fatigue, cracking, and the wing itself was a real problem. And so it was a real challenge. And they actually, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, the last A-10 left Hill Air Force Base. So they're done with a depot level maintenance. The Air Force, they're trying to get rid of it. They've been trying to get rid of the A-10 for 20 plus years. And just this week, here it is, finding, taking out attack boats in the Persian Gulf and in the Strait of Hormuz. It's kind of like water. It finds its way into the battle every single time. Water, it makes it through all the cracks. And the A-10's the same way, but it's supposed to be retired next year. I believe is its curtain call. We'll see if that actually happens or not. But that was really fun.
Unless they have another plane in the pipeline, I just don't see them getting rid of it.
It's such a challenging thing because, it's a very survivable platform. The gun is great. It carries a ton of ordnance.
Yeah.
The pilots are outstanding and by far and away are the best experts in all of the armed forces in close air support.
Yeah.
And they also play a critical role in CSAR, combat search and rescue. Or at least they did. But there is a belief that they can't survive in a high threat near peer battle space where it's basically a fifth generation type party, and but at the same time, nothing else can do what it does. And again, that community, the pilots are so good at close air support. They take such pride in it. There's so many amazing stories. After the chairman yesterday briefed in his morning briefing at the Pentagon, Chairman Kane, that the A-10 is doing this role, taking out attack boats and doing his thing in the Strait of Hormuz. There was just a swell of tweets and things of former Marine and Army infantry types telling their stories. This one A-10 pilot said when he retired, a bunch of soldiers that he provided close air support to came to his retirement with their children that they had after the deployment because he saved their lives. Very touching type kind of stuff, and that's pretty routine in theater for the guys flying close air support to at some point brief and interact with folks doing the missions on the ground. And obviously that's a very close relationship, and obviously a tight bond gets formed. So it's definitely controversial what's going to replace it. It's a hybrid of the F-15E, the F-35, all these things, and but the platform. I would challenge anyone to find an infantry officer or senior NCO in the Army or the Marine Corps with experience in the global war on terror, who to say that something does the close air support mission better than A-10s, because I don't think they exist.
The only thing I could think of is this Spectral gunships.
Yeah, I mean the AC-130 it's a unique platform, and obviously there's helicopters, the Apache, the Marines fly the Cobra, but The A-10 is there's nothing like it,
Mhm.
and there's nothing in the pipeline really to replace it.
Yeah. Yeah, let's face it. My understanding from the top brass is they're all fighter pilots, and they all think ground support is beneath them.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's beneath them because I mean they certainly F-16 guys and F-15E guys provide a lot of close air support.
Mhm.
It's a part of their mission as well.
Mhm.
It's but yes, the Air Force is definitely for the most part has always been run by fighter pilots, except when LeMay was in charge and the bomber mafia was in charge.
Yeah.
Um, but also, in fairness to the leadership in the Air Force, the A-10 is an extremely expensive airplane to fly.
True.
It's old. Uh, its OEM has been out of business for 35 years. It's a real challenging aircraft from a logistics and maintenance perspective. Um, it was hard to get customized parts for the aircraft. We had to use stiffeners and fasteners to fix wing cracks and wing problems, and it's extremely expensive when you go to a vendor and say I need 20 of these, and they're like, nah, okay, here's what it's going to cost you. If you needed 2,000 like F-16s do, it'd be a lot cheaper.
Right.
But I got to get the molding and I got to get everything done to make 20 of these. It's going to be expensive, and it doesn't get cheaper as it gets older.
Hmm.
So that's a big driver for retiring the A-10. The biggest driver, in my opinion. It's not that it's. I don't think anybody. People have tried. I don't think anybody can make an argument that the A-10 is completely obsolete. I mean,
Hmm.
the proof's in the pudding. That's being used right now in combat operations
Hmm.
against Iran. So the biggest driver to me is cost, and that's basically what it always is when it comes to airplanes in the Air Force and retiring them. Obsolescence is a part of it, but they just get extremely expensive to maintain and operate. And there's a lot of metrics about maintenance man hours per flight hour, cost per flight hour, everything that rolls into generating an aircraft, and they're just A-10s are just not cost effective anymore. And that's strictly speaking from just looking at the money perspective, not
Hmm.
how good they are at close air support and what they do in combat. And the bean counters in the military, they get a say in how this all operates and plays out.
Hmm. It's true enough. No, you were talking about bombers. I was once at a military. I go to this conference for wargaming called Connections sometimes, and
Hmm.
Connections is basically set up by a retired Air Force colonel. Now he was active duty when he started it, and he basically had. He was given the mission to set it up because he had an interest in wargaming. He actually wrote one of the uh, co-wrote one of the Desert Shield books. He wrote the Desert Storm book, but no one cared anymore by the time it came out because the war was over. So he didn't get anywhere near the money that the Desert Shield book got, fact book got. But he still bought a truck apparently. But we're at this conference, so it's civilians where I come in, academics, and the military, and people like the Rand Corporation. So whatever where you put them in, and at one conference, we always joke about how the Air Force runs on the troop thing that the Air Force runs on is PowerPoint. And this one light colonel from the bombers is giving a terrible PowerPoint presentation. And I turned to my friend, I thought this guy's in the Air Force. I thought they were good at this. He said, why do you think he's in bombers?
Yeah, there's a lot of PowerPoint warriors in the Air Force. I can't
Mm.
deny that. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Another guy, a science fiction writer I know who's a retired colonel, now lives in El Salvador, of all places. And he said was of two minds about Saddam Hussein. He's like, well, on the one hand, terrible dictator started a war in Kuwait, but on the other hand, he saved me from the Pentagon.
Yeah, well, that's I can sympathize with that. That was probably one of my it was the biggest reason I got out. I was also sick of being overseas and
Mhm.
being in the Middle East. But when I was a career broader in Utah, as I said earlier, it's kind of the corporate Air Force.
Mhm.
The career broaders, we worked directly for the Air Logistics Center leadership. So at that time, it was a 2-star commander, 1-star deputy, vice commander, and uh, it was very competitive, and it was the first time in the Air Force where I didn't feel like I was part of the team,
Mm.
where I felt like we were more like we were at a law firm competing for partnership.
Mm.
And you know, most we all did very, very well. Those who stayed in for their full career, several are they're currently 1-star generals. Most retired as full bird colonels. So they all did very, very well. But and then they were great people, but it was just not the same as being in a flying squadron with you know having 200, 250 airmen under your charge and responsible for the aircraft and generating sorties and all that goes along with it. The camaraderie wasn't there, and that's not something I really was looking forward to, going eventually having to do staff work, whether at the Pentagon or a major command headquarters like Wright-Patterson with Air Force Material Command, Air Combat Command, and Langley, Virginia, Langley Air Force Base, Virginia. So uh, all that kind of drove my thought process. If I could have been on the flight line, I'd probably still be doing it if my body would allow for it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like I would have never. I've never done anything that fulfilling in my civilian career as my first 7 years in the Air Force being on the flight line.
Yeah, you mentioned British and the Canadians, where we have the regiment system, where you can stay in those positions longer and won't get, uh, it won't. You're not, you know, you got to retire because you're not going up the rank structure.
Yeah, it's just and don't get me wrong, you do have opportunities. You dip into the back into the operational Air Force, go back
Mhm.
to staff or education, but like there's squadron commanders, group commanders.
Mm.
Um, yeah, no different than uh, being the captain of a Navy ship or the commander of a Army brigade or battalion. You do get to dip back into operations, uh, but taking the breaks to go do staff work, go to school, professional military education, all that kind of stuff, it just didn't interest me. I was uh, very much, and, and, you know, I was very much in love with just being a good old aircraft maintenance officer,
Mhm.
and uh, I wish the military would change and reform, particularly how they do things with their officers. If you're a good football coach, you don't stop. The New England Patriots didn't tell Bill Belichick, you need to take a year off and and go to school and become more well-rounded so you're better at your press conferences and then
Right.
come back and coach. That's not the way it works. Like, of
Yeah.
course not. We want to win. And so I wish the military would not have the up and out promotion system. I wish that they would not get into um, I wish they would not get into all the semantics that they do. If you're good at what you do, uh, you should be able to stay where you're at and
Mm.
become even more of an expert at it.
Yep. I believe this is the fault of Goldwater and Nichols, isn't it?
That played a part in it, yeah. It, you know, there's such an I mean, I think, Secretary Hegseth has his review panel about professional military education and its value um, in the in the in the current space. But yeah, Goldwater Nichols, it did a lot of good things in reforming the military and how we operate, particularly how we operate in combat,
Mhm.
how we're organized with combatant commands and joint operations. Those were all very, very good things. But there was, like almost anything, like social media, it's a great thing. There's also a lot of downside to it.
Right.
Um, joint operations, when I was in the Air Force, joint was the word. You got to be joint. Joint. I've got joint experience. I've got joint staff experience. All this, and it was a problem at times for the Air Force because the Air Force just did not play in the joint world as much
Right.
as the Navy and the Army did. And if I had a nickel for every time a one-star general or colonel told me about, you need to get purple, go be joint, go need to seek out a joint assignment. And they don't just fall off of trees. There's only so many joint assignments. And quite frankly, a lot of the joint assignments, they're more open to certain career fields in certain branches of the armed forces. So,
right. Yeah. Not much call for maintenance officers on I don't know, like just yeah.
I mean,
there's not a staff position. There's no, you and the tanker tank mechanics aren't going to get together and like do a joint exercise.
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's the logistics of you take like a combatant command like Central Command. They have an entire the J4 logistics element, but it's it requires certain skill sets. So some career fields are much more open and are in much more demand to fill joint billets than other career fields. And that was a real byproduct of Goldwater Nichols that you needed that joint stink on you, as we would say, to be to move up through the ranks.
So that's now can you tell us about what you're doing now?
So I'm a consultant in government contracting. I got out of the Air Force and I worked I went back to Utah and I worked program management, doing a lot of engineering contracts for the Air Force at Hill Air Force Base. I was promoted in 2012 and moved to Washington, D.C., and worked there in government contracts, mainly Department of War and Homeland Security. And I left DC during COVID in the summer of 2020 and moved out here to Colorado. And now I'm an independent consultant. I work with small businesses and help them with their on a somewhat part-time basis. I help them with their proposals, introduce them to partnerships with larger companies, work with the State Chamber of Commerce, and their price to win strategies, all those kind of things. And so I have a bunch of clients that I help with that for now until AI replaces me. I've been replaced by AI a couple of times.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, you write a technical proposal for like an engineering contract at one of the Air Force or Navy depots. This was actually at a fleet readiness center, a Navy fleet readiness center. It's called FRC Southeast in Jacksonville. And client said, I went through their technical proposal and gave them my input on stuff and evaluated through the sections and L&M of the government request for proposal, all these things. And they took it and then they ran it through AI and, they said, hey, AI is cheaper.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it's just a matter of time before that happens.
Okay, well, you'll probably be retired before it happens that way.
I hope to be fully retired before that happens. Yeah. I saw this morning that Elon Musk responded to a tweet. Some guy said that he used TurboTax. He did his sister's taxes and that he ran it through Grok and Grok saved him an extra $1,400. And he tweeted that. Then Elon, he jumped right on and said, use Grok for your taxes. It's way better than any tax service. I was like,
oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming. AI is fascinating to me. I admit, like I don't play around with it as much as I probably should. I know that's all the rage now is to get proficient with AI and learn to use it as something more than just a search engine. Um, and the debates about it, I think it's fascinating with what career fields are going to be impacted, universal basic income. There's so much to that conversation that I find fascinating.
Mm-hmm. No, I've been using Grok on the show a bit to help script out intros. So I tend to do now I'm doing using Grok to script out about 15 minutes worth of content. And then I do a review of another video often.
Do you use Grok on a daily basis?
Since I only just started doing this week, but I've used Grok on and off and on for different things. So often, I'm going through X and seeing some very is this real, Grok? And Grok will come back and say, nope, this is there's some guy posted a thing about a tanker being destroyed in the Persian Gulf. And I asked Grok, and he said, no, it said it was a tanker that was exploded in the South China Sea last year.
Yeah, I think that's been fascinating to see just since the war in Iran started,
mm-hmm.
how much everybody is running everything through some form of AI.
Mm-hmm.
The debate right now, that F-35, Air Force F-35 that was allegedly hit over Iran. I don't know if they've confirmed it or not,
mm-hmm.
But there was a video, and whether or not that video is authentic, and it's. I'm about ready to jump into at least dip my toes into the AI pool. I don't know which one to use. I have Gemini and Grok on my phone. I guess I do use AI a little bit with Microsoft, the Copilot.
Mm-hmm.
But first time I used that, I didn't even mean to.
Yeah.
It just popped up as started evaluating something. I was like, I don't know what button I hit to do that. Or I'm by no means the most technically proficient person when it comes to technology. So.
Yeah, I asked Grok. First, I asked 2 or 3 days ago, I said, hey, what conservative influencer is my channel most like? And came back, you're very Tucker Carlson. I'm like, okay. And then I said, write me a script. What topic should I cover for today? And it gave me a topic. It was the assassination of the Moas guy. And then I said, give me a script on that, and wrote me out a script, and I used that. And then I did a video review. So that's kind of my experience so far using it in that regard. And then I had to tweak it to make me sound a little less Tucker Carlson, because I'm more of though I do delve into the conspiracy, I look at it from more of a political realist level of what's going on here, rather than just because it would be is this really America first? And I'm like, I'm not American. Take that out.
Well, speaking of that, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on the current state of politics in Canada,
mm-hmm.
and your leadership. And I asked because your conservative leader was on the Joe Rogan podcast this week, and I'm a little over halfway through it, and I find him to be very, very interesting, and really wasn't too familiar with him before this podcast. So just curious what your thoughts are on the state of things.
Okay, so with Pierre, I think he's okay. I was really annoyed with him because he kicked my candidate out of the leadership race in a very underhanded way. Not that my candidate wouldn't have done the same thing to him. So that's, politics. You get the knives out and you stab each other. And I looked into it, and I found out that they had hated each other from back when they were in the political youth wings of the Conservative Party. So they both really hated each other for decades. So I was a little, but I didn't like that. And but yeah, I thought the podcast really humanized him a lot more. So I'm a lot more sympathetic. I did know that he was he wrote when he said to Joe Rogan something along the lines of like, "Oh yeah, I never really thought about. I always thought I'd be prime minister maybe at the end of my political career." This guy wrote in like a high school essay on how he wanted to be prime minister of Canada back in high school. So that was a little disingenuous on his part, but politician. I didn't know his love of mixed martial arts or his wrestling career at all. So that was kind of interesting how he got involved in politics that way. I did know his mother had given him up for adoption when she was 15. So I always kind of realized that's also why he's a bit more harder than other politicians in Canada, having that kind of background in your life, having gone through the system in one way or another. It always makes people much harder or breaks them from what I've experienced. Mark Carney, I can't help but notice that every time when he makes a proposal for infrastructure or policy, it always seems to benefit his old hedge fund. And I don't like the fact that we brought in the guy who broke the Bank of England and made England broke as the central banker of England, the prime minister of Canada, even though when he was the central banker of Canada, he did a pretty good job. But he also had the fact that he had Stephen Harper as prime minister to do that with. And Stephen Harper is an odd prime minister. He's like a populist technocrat. It's just like a very odd thing to happen. But he did have one in his first term. Stephen Harper made this big stink out of what we call the long form census. That basically, if you don't fill out the long form census, you could be fined or go to jail. And he found that ridiculous, and he dropped that off of it. And people were complaining, but like one NGO was complaining about it, and they're like, "Oh, but this means we'll have to spend our own money to gather this information." Really? That's why you want the census? Because you're getting a government subsidy effectively? So, so basically in Canada, this is something for Americans, I often explain to Americans, is that Canada is like the United States before the Civil War. Canada is a creation of the provinces, and the provinces jealously guard their things. So, for instance, my premier, Doug Ford, he's building a bunch of nuclear power plants and small modular reactors. He's been pushing this for over 10 years now. And we had the first ones set to be finished construction in 2 years. And we're planning on like selling that technology to the world. But if he wants to build power plants, he just does it. We have no nuclear regulatory commission here. So if a province wants to build a whole bunch of nuclear power plants and sell that energy to the United States, we just do it. He's decided Quebec doesn't want to build allow a pipeline to go through it because, they're all very green over there. We'll just build a port in James Bay, and we'll build a pipeline from the west up to there, and we'll ship oil around Quebec. That's the kind of out of box thinking we're getting it out of our guy. And so we have no federal Department of Education here. So it's up to each province to decide how they want to teach their students. We have 3 separate foreign policies in Canada. We have the Prime Minister's Foreign Affairs. We have the Council of Ministers. And then there's Danielle Smith out in Alberta doing her own foreign policy by going down with Kevin O'Leary to Mar-a-Lago. So we have a whole bunch of really different things going on, dynamics here in Canada that unless you're paying attention to it like I do, because I'm involved in the politics here, you wouldn't really get it. Everyone just thinks in America just thinks Ottawa's in charge. And it's like, no, the provinces are all doing their own thing here and bypassing Ottawa because they think Ottawa is very weak as a central government. It's kind of ironic. A friend of mine mentioned it to me once. Americans wanted strong states and a weak central government and got a strong central government and weak states. In Canada, we wanted a strong central government and got a weak central government and strong provincial governments.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's probably one thing, the lack of understanding that so many Americans have about our allies,
Mm,
um, domestic political
mm,
environments, and how that impacts foreign policy, and how they relate to us. Those
mm,
are those are very real things, and they require time
mm.
and research. And most people don't want to put in that time to take the time to understand, what's going on in France, what's going on in Canada, what's going on in the United Kingdom, what's affecting how they are dealing with us and other allies, how they're dealing with NATO and issues there. It all matters. And it's naive to think that they don't have as many problems as we do here in America.
Right.
Um, I mean, my goodness, we can't even get. I think we're going to have a ton of airports closed this weekend because Congress won't pay the Transportation Security Administration to. They're not showing up to work. I saw this morning in Houston, the wait was like 2.5 hours to get through security,
Mm.
and people are missing flights, and it's just, more examples of just how incompetent Washington D.C. is. And amazes me in America. Everybody hates Congress, but they love their congressman.
Yeah.
And everybody hates Washington D.C., but it doesn't change. It just keeps getting worse and worse.
Yeah. So one of the things here in Canada that's very different from the United States and even in some of the other countries, like United Kingdom, we have absolute party discipline here. If you don't toe the line of your party leader, you're out, and you won't get. And most times, you lose your nomination. Your riding association ditches you. Sometimes when you take a principled stand, you'll get reelected by, like, the Canadians like that. You took a stand on this issue. This happened to in Trudeau's first term when he kicked out his attorney general because she wouldn't allow him to change the law to allow a criminal corporation to get away with a low fine. Now, Trudeau wasn't doing it because he was necessarily being bribed by this corporation. He was just doing it because 4,000 jobs in his district. But that was something. So he kicked her out of the party, and she got reelected by her constituency because when the scandal broke, they were willing to support her. But most times, unless you're doing something like that, you won't get reelected. And we just have these dictators we call premiers running around all over the place. They're only held accountable when they're in a minority government. And Mark Carney keeps bribing people to join his government from the Conservatives or other parties. And I'm pretty sure he's told them after his government leaves office, so get them jobs working for his hedge fund or some other related business. But
what is Carney's net worth?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Probably the richest prime minister ever, I would think.
I know he's up there, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, actually, he's not the richest prime minister. Reddit's given me Times of India says he's only worth $7 million, but his hedge fund is worth about $96 billion. So that's what we're getting. And so it's kind of depending on how you measure his technical net worth, right? We had Paul Martin was considered the richest prime minister Canada for a long time. He was worth $100 million because his family owned this giant shipping line.
Yeah, I think you're Pierre on Joe Rogan. He almost made it sound like it's just inevitable that eventually the Conservatives are going to get elected, and it's just a matter of time. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, pretty much it is, because what cost him the election last time was, when we killed off the NDP, which is we have a three-party system here. So they kind of stampeded into the arms of the Liberals. We were hoping a lot of those people would just stay home. The other situation is basically what happened when Trump started making this 51st state nonsense stuff going on, it terrified the boomers, who are the largest voting demographic, and much as they are in the United States, they are here in Canada. But that voting demographic is going to go away in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Through natural age, they just age out. And the younger population here is very right wing, like extremely so, after COVID really made that happen. So I just think it'll just come out through the aging process. And like Carney will, the problem is that Trudeau did it first. He gives $600 million to all the newspapers and radio stations in Canada. So it's hard to be skeptical of the government when you're literally getting paid by them.
Certainly.
Mm-hmm. So there's only a few independent news journalists out there who are making modest. There's like a half dozen conservative podcasters here. The biggest is Rebel News, and a lot of people. So we have and other populist people, but we don't have the power of a Joe Rogan yet in Canada. There's people are trying to do it, but just don't have that kind of audience, and then it takes time to build up that audience. But there's a handful of people doing it. We got people in the 50,000 subscriber range. We don't have in the 15 million range as some
right.
people.
Of the younger Canadians who are conservative, you said that the younger are far more right wing or right leaning. What are some of their top? Obviously, COVID was a huge part of it, but what are some of their top issues, current day issues?
The fact that the biggest issues are, the same ones that are affecting youth in the United States: lack of housing, lack of jobs opportunity. The fact the Liberals have shipped in all these Indians that are basically taking all the low-paid jobs away from people. That's really the crisis that I see for a lot of people. And I think one of the things, though, it's interesting about a lot of these Indians, Pakistanis who are coming in, they're going home. They come here, they're like a doctor or an engineer back in their home country. They get here with the promise of being a doctor or an engineer, and they end up driving Uber. And they're like, why did I come here? Well, they were sold a BS lie that Canada is still the Canada of the Stephen Harper years, versus they are coming here and finding it's actually worse here than their home countries.
Interesting. What is your take and to a broader extent, conservative Canadians' take on Canada's role in NATO and the world stage?
We've been really in retreat since Afghanistan. We haven't really done much. I mean, this big Trudeau sent, ironically, troops to Iraq, of all things. He had our special forces unit there training Iraqi guards. I thought he was going to, because there's not Nigeria, but there's another country in Mali. There was a call for a big commitment to go to Mali and help fight the guerrillas there. And I thought that would have been the perfect mission for the Canadian Armed Forces to get involved there. But Trudeau kind of just let us stay home. Carney's big focus, from when I talked to my stepbrother on it, is Canada's really going to go for continental defense, especially with the opening up of the Arctic. We're looking to get up. The government's plan is to get up to 200,000 troops, including the reserves. And my stepbrother's involved in all sorts of logistics planning for deploying up in the north. He's a big fan of the Gripen because, it's much more robust in the sense that, we don't need a fifth generation fighter in the north. We need something that can be reliably maintained. And, we'll get the factory here under license, so that'll provide jobs and stuff like that. But, they're looking to build more ports up in the north area and basically get our guys all Arctic trained. So that's kind of been the focus from what he tells me.
Yeah, I've always been intrigued by the issue of the Canadian replacement for the CF-18s
Mhm.
and what aircraft, because you know I would not think a single engine fighter like the F-35 would be a good idea for
Mhm.
covering the vast expanses of northern Canada. Losing your engine and you eject out over some of those places, you're going to be there for a while before somebody comes and tries to pick you up if you make it that
Yeah.
long in that environment. And I mean, I think I've always, you know, the that has to be one or the other, and why Canada really never entertained a split buy, where
Yeah.
maybe a fifth generation fighter like for NATO commitment
Yeah.
operating in Europe, but something completely different like the Gripen or like the F-15EX, something like that
Yeah.
for homeland defense and all the things that Canada does there. That just that environment and just how big the country is, man. Single engine fighters just don't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, one of our problems is the procurement here is a mess. There's been a lot of politicization of the military. Like our commanding general is a woman. Nothing wrong with that, but I mean, uh, it does. She does push a lot of DEI stuff. That's never been very big here in Canada. Fortunately, we never had it quite as crazy as how it went in the States. Uh, like I saw people who would have. Some people would put on their like their sexes on their emails. I never did when I was working corporate, and it was never really a big thing. So,
Yeah,
how pronounced.
it's still a thing here. I don't think it's as prominent as it used to be.
Mhm.
I mean, there was a lot of organizations, companies, I think even in the government, state governments and stuff, where it was mandated in like your email signature to use your pronouns and all of those things. So
Yeah. And a lot there was definitely I was talking to a friend of mine who worked for the city of London in Canada, not the banker conspiracy, and she was telling me that all her official documents have to be written as they, as to not offend people.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think we're rolling back a lot of the DEI stuff
Mhm.
slowly but surely. Uh,
Mhm.
I was never a fan of it. I also never believed it was as uh, dire as some people want it to be. I was very offended, like when we had that mishap, that aircraft crash in Washington at Reagan National Airport,
Mhm.
and one of the helicopter pilots, one of the Army helicopter pilots, was a woman, and the next day people or when it was revealed who her identity, and people just immediately on the very far right in America just assuming that she wasn't qualified and all of this
Mhm.
and not letting the investigation play out happens far too much. And I'm by no means like in the very far right, the Tuckers and the Candace Owens and all
Mhm.
that, all those people. um uh and I think that's been very, very disappointing. But it was bad in the military, that's for
Mhm.
sure. Not when I was in. It
Mhm.
didn't start until after I separated, but I have enough friends that are still in, particularly the Air Force, and uh, it was as one of them referred to, it's a stage one cancer, and it's only going to get worse
Yeah.
unless we take care of it. And I think that process has begun.
Yeah, no, the problem was I recognized it almost instantly for what it was, and it's just the latest version of a revolutionary thieves camp can't. So saw in the Soviet Union where they always called each other comrade, or when you were in the French Revolution where everyone was calling themselves citizen this, citizen that. When you have these revolutionary movements come in, they always like adopt a language to identify each other with, and they always start purging people and canceling people. And we were fortunate that they just canceled people. They didn't have like anyone getting killed like you see in the first 20 minutes of the three body problem, but that is definitely I recognized it for what it is, and I always knew it would run out of steam because just you'll have your Thermidor moment where where they guys realize, oh, they killed those guys. They're coming for us next. We got to wipe them out. So you cancel enough people, you can't. So now all of the you can't, there's a certain point where you can't cancel people because you canceled too many.
So you're a historian and a military historian. What's your what period of history do you enjoy studying and researching the most as it relates to military matters?
A lot of it's been 20th century stuff. So I like World War One a lot, and I kind of focused in on that. When I was writing more regularly, I did a very smart question. I went to my editor and I said, "What kind of articles are you looking for?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah, I need more articles on the Soviet Union in World War Two because Americans like to write about who they fight." So I have a lot. Most of my writers are Americans, and they write about the Japanese, and they write about the Waffen SS in the German army because those are who they fought. So I get a lot of articles on that, but I don't get a lot of articles on the Soviet Union. So I started writing a lot, very much about the Soviet Union for about 5 years. And yeah, and then World War One is just more like I like it because it's got all the stuff that everyone thinks it's all trench warfare, and it's not. You have all this very interesting stuff that happens in Greece. Uh, One of the most interesting things about what happens in Greece is that's really when the war is won. It's not won by the American intervention on that helps deflect the invasion, but the Germans' army, their offensive in 1918 doesn't have a strategic objective. It's just like go as far as you can was their kind of mentality. So they end up not ending up in anywhere useful. But in Greece, the army front there, basically the Bulgarians collapse, and there's nothing in front of them, the Allies anymore. So Austro-Hungarian Empire was about to just fall. And of course, it fell to revolutionary means. And same with the Germans. The blockade had really done the job there. And I've written articles on I have a very interesting book back there about like the special forces in Vietnam. One of the things is like, it's about one of the big players in it is a light colonel who ends the war, World War II, as the youngest light colonel in the U.S. Army. And at the start of Vietnam, he's the oldest light colonel in the U.S. Army. And I've read a lot about the war on terror because that's the time we have here. So I grew up in, so I read a lot about that kind of stuff. It's really a shame. We had one in Afghanistan by 2005, and then the U.S. Army generals come along. So I don't remember which commander comes along, but he comes in and he says, "Well, I'm here to fight the Taliban." And they're like, "Well, the Taliban have kind of surrendered and they're actually forming a political party." "Well, I'm here to fight someone. I can't get promoted unless I kill Taliban." And Karzai's brother comes along and says, "I know where you can find some Taliban." And of course, it was all of Karzai's Karzai's brother is the leading drug dealer in Afghanistan, and he was just targeting the Americans that whoever his rivals in the drug business were. And when they started bombing those people, the Taliban were like, "Well, you told us you weren't going to do this anymore. We could form a political party. I guess we would just have to go back to killing you."
Yeah, it's unfortunately, it bothers me with what we're doing in Iran when people talk about Iraq and Afghanistan. But that does not mean that looking back at all the mistakes that we made in Iraq and Afghanistan are not relevant to the discussion in some ways. Militarily, what's going on in Iran is really there's really no comparison to Afghanistan, and for the most part, Iraq either. But the end game exit strategy, what's being overlooked, what is being focused on, those are all fair things. I'll always believe that a huge part of the debacle that became Afghanistan was invading Iraq.
Yeah.
Afghanistan became such a to say it was put on the back burner for all those years is an insult to back burners. And a lot of what you were just talking about, it really did occur, the '05 through like '08, '09 era where everything was about Iraq. And it wasn't just from a military and diplomatic perspective, to the extent that Congress is effective at anything. Congress wasn't paying much attention to Afghanistan. Um, Confirmation hearings for military leadership and Pentagon leadership. Investigations and good questions were not asked of people in the nomination process. The Afghanistan papers and basically the almost treasonous behavior of military leadership in Afghanistan, lying to Congress, starting at the end of the Bush administration through the Obama administration, beginning of Trump's first administration, telling everybody it's hunky dory, everything's fine over there. And again, people just weren't paying that much attention because, for a long time, not to say there weren't casualties, but it wasn't like what was happening in Iraq, where we were losing, a lot of troops on a fairly regular basis, and taking casualties. And, that drew a lot of attention, rightfully so to some extent, from leadership. And we were making mistakes in Afghanistan, and to use a tennis term, they were unforced errors. A lot of it was, as you talked about, like with the Taliban, things were in many ways being worked out, and I think the diplomatic class really failed to grasp how transactional a place like Afghanistan is.
Right.
And the concept of democracy should have never even come up. Having elections, these people, it's just not in their there's no record of it. They don't understand the concept of it, and that's not to insult them or their intelligence. It's just they just don't have any experience with it, and they're also not interested in it.
How are you going to have democracy in a country with a 96% illiteracy rate or something like
Right.
that?
It's very high. Yeah, exactly. And when you're that transactional, elections can be a problem. I mean, elections are a breeding ground for corruption in many ways, in societies like that. So it's I hope that we don't make similar mistakes in Iran. I'm not, I definitely have concerns, but I still remain optimistic about the outcome there. I think a Middle East without the Iranian regime, I don't think the Middle East can flourish, and all the things that they're trying to do to use their energy money and grow other industries. That growth, that vision for the future can't happen as long as you have an Iran in its current state with the aspirations for nuclear weapons and their ballistic missiles and their cavalier attitude towards the region. And it's a shame because again, Saudi Arabia, MBS. I'm not saying they're the greatest nation in the world, but they are an ally. But their vision for AI and technology and sports, and becoming a vacation destination, all those things, that's smart because the oil's not going to be there forever, and it's a long-term vision for things. So,
well, actually, oil is going to be there forever. It turns out it's a renewable resource.
It is, but
it takes a long time to renew it.
Yeah, and diversifying your economy.
Yeah, diversifying your economy is still much better than just relying on oil.
Yeah, and but yeah, you are correct.
Yeah.
It is renewable. I think
Yeah.
people sometimes forget where it comes from.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm not a chemist. I have a friend who is. He explained it to me once, and it went over my head. But basically, they've gone back to like dry wells and found oil in it. The 1/3 full, like 30 years later, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is not peak oil. It's never going to happen.
Right.
Earth is generating this somehow. Maybe it is the black blood of the Earth.
It is, as we said in the Air Force, pushing out dinosaurs when starting up jet engines and taking off. That's all it is.
Mm. So yeah, like I said, I've always been I didn't want the airstrikes to happen. I thought this would be best to go in through like intelligence operations, make it, because I was worried about rallying around flag effect. But I guess I'm still cautiously optimistic. If nothing else, you will have reduced their effectiveness for a good, like, put their program back a decade at least. Like that's so. And hopefully, and really weaken their internal structures. There'll be, I don't think it's going to be civil war necessarily. I think Persia is much, or Iran/Persia is much more developed as a nation state than Afghanistan. But yeah, that's going to be what's going to. I think they might have some sort of, like, you'll get a minor victory out of it, if not the total victory that everyone was hoping for.
Yeah, and I think that's where where the United States and Israel might have, get to that fork in the road and have some divergence in towards the end of this operation. I'm convinced the Israelis want to see this through to regime change and doing what is necessary, taking care of Hezbollah in Lebanon and really jumping at the opportunity with the U.S. Being involved and taking advantage of U.S. support and U.S. assets to end this problem. I feel for the Iranian people. They're Iranian Americans are wonderful. Everybody that came over to America and escaped after the revolution. I had several Iranian friends whose parents left, and I grew up in Iowa, and they were wonderful people, wonderful contributors to society, and it'd be great to have regime change, and for the Iranian people to not have to live under that. At the same time, not our goal.
Yeah.
Like if it happens, great, but I believe the four stated military goals. The one that concerns me is proxies. Getting rid of the ballistic missiles, getting rid of nuclear technology, destroying the Navy are very measurable military goals. But reducing or a future effects result of eliminating their ability to utilize their proxies and that to me is a little scary as far as mission creep goes, because it's kind of like well, we have to keep we gotta find Al Qaeda wherever they are and just keep killing them, and that's an endless mission in many ways. So kind of a concern of mine, that last goal as it relates to the proxies. But I also think these aren't U.S. military goals. They're Israeli goals as well. And I think the Israelis might be doing more of the heavy lifting. For example, if it's, like they've mobilized 450,000 reservists and they're going to invade southern Lebanon and take care of Hezbollah. Well, that's a big part of the proxy problem. And sounds like the Israelis would do the heavy lifting there. So
yeah, they tried that already, and it didn't work out too well for them last time.
Not. Well, the thing is with that kind of stuff is, and history has shown, you can't leave.
Yeah,
I mean, we're still in Japan and South Korea and Germany, and does Israel want to be an occupying force in Lebanon for 50 years? I don't think they do, but if you're going to ensure that something like Hezbollah, if you eliminate Hezbollah, and you want to ensure that nothing like that ever comes back to Lebanon, you need to stay there. probably. Like that's the unfortunate truth, and that creates a whole other myriad of problems.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Looking back at Afghanistan, the solution to that was to do what the British did after the second Afghan War: find a local guy, put him in charge, pay him money to keep everything going, and get the hell out.
Yep. Yeah, one of the shame, of how the U.S. left Afghanistan too was how valuable a place. If we had that puppet government there, it wasn't perfect, but in large part, combat operations had stopped,
Yep.
and keeping a place like Bagram Airfield, which is I don't know 500, 600 miles from Tehran, not too couple hundred miles from the border, not far from China, not far from Russia, an extremely secure, well-built airfield by the Soviets when they invaded.
Yep.
Bagram was just a fortress and had all the infrastructure to support a robust military airfield and aircraft there. So again, it's unfortunate in so many ways, and I always, I said, I believe in American exceptionalism, and I believe that what we're doing in Iran is right. At the same time, there are risks, and one of those that's always in the back of my mind is that we don't drift back into something like we saw in our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, where we get mission creep and we try to do things that were not part of the original purpose.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Anything else you feel like we should talk about?
and I don't want to talk about my March Madness
Yeah.
pool. My teams aren't doing too good. So no, it was a good conversation. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Glad. I actually have another show I'm going to be doing at 3 o'clock, so this works out well to take a little bit of a break from that before I go on with my my usual Friday co-host Warhound Actual, and we get into all the semi-conspiracy stuff.
Nothing wrong with that. I've seen that before. I've checked in on a few of your shows. So
okay, thanks.
Yeah, enjoy your channel, and yeah, thank you again for having me on, David. I appreciate
no problem. Thanks for coming on. And when we have maybe we'll have both. I'll try and get you and Nicole or Kelly on, and we can have a little bit mini panel.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd look forward to that. That'd be awesome. All right.
Okay.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thanks.
See you tonight, maybe.
Yep.
Okay. And if you like that kind of channel content here, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue to get building the audience so that more people can see interesting conversations like this one. Thanks. We're checking out.